The wind carried salt and heat along the coastline that afternoon, brushing across the shore in slow, teasing waves. The kind of day that made the air feel heavy, like everything around you was holding its breath. Alex stood alone on the sand, his toes sinking into the warm grains as the tide whispered secrets just feet away. He had driven out to the beach to clear his head, not expecting anything. Not wanting anything, really. But the quiet was a kind of emptiness he'd grown used to. He had just turned 30, tall, lean, with a quiet presence that made people take a second look without quite knowing why. His job in graphic design kept him busy, but never full. Friends came and went. Relationships flickered and faded. He had started to feel like someone watching his own life from the outside, like none of it quite belonged to him anymore. So he took these day trips, out to nowhere in particular, to breathe in some space. There weren't many people on the beach that day, a family packing up to leave, a pair of surfers out in the distance, and one man, alone too. Sitting on a weathered driftwood log a little ways down the shore, his legs stretched out, one arm resting lazily on the back of the log like he wasn't in a hurry for anything. He had dark hair, slightly curled by the humidity, and sunglasses that reflected the sky. Something about his stillness caught Alex's eye. It wasn't long before their paths crossed. Alex had been walking along the water's edge, letting the cold foam hit his ankles when he heard a voice behind him. Calm, low, like it belonged to the sand and the wind. "Nice day to be alone, huh?" Alex turned. The stranger had stood up and was now just a few feet behind him. Close enough that Alex could see the line of his jaw, the quiet ease in his stance. He was barefoot too, dressed simply in a white shirt and worn shorts, like someone who had nothing to prove. Or maybe not so alone, the man added, one corner of his mouth curving. Alex didn't answer right away. His eyes narrowed slightly, instinct fighting curiosity. But something about the man's tone wasn't invasive. It was patient, like he was just there if Alex wanted to reply. "Guess we both had the same idea," Alex said finally, wiping his hands on his shorts. "Silence is underrated." The man smiled. "Sometimes, but not always." He held out a hand. "I'm Ryan." Alex shook it, his fingers curling around a palm rough from work or adventure or something in between. "Alex." For a moment, neither of them said anything more, just the wind pushing past them and the rising hum of the tide. It wasn't awkward. It was something else. They ended up walking together. No plan, just following the beach, matching each other's pace without thinking about it. Their conversation wandered. Work, old road trips, books they hadn't finished. Ryan had a quiet magnetism, like gravity disguised as charm. His laugh was rare but real, and his gaze, when he let it settle on Alex, was steady, undistracted. Time passed in the kind of slow spiral you only get when you stop paying attention. The sun dipped lower, and they found themselves sitting on the sand again, the driftwood behind them now. The ocean stretched out in front like an open invitation. Their shoulders were close, just barely brushing. Neither of them moved away. Alex could feel the heat of Ryan's skin through his shirt. That subtle warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. When Ryan leaned back on his elbows, his hand slid just slightly behind Alex's, not touching, but near enough to set off a buzz in the pit of Alex's stomach. It was the kind of nearness that made him hold his breath, not out of fear, but anticipation. "I come out here a lot," Ryan said quietly, watching the water. "Too much noise in my head most days." Alex nodded, though Ryan wasn't looking at him. Yeah, I know that feeling. There was something about Ryan's presence that unraveled Alex's usual defenses. Maybe it was the way he didn't push. Maybe it was the way he looked at the ocean when he talked, like it knew him better than most people did. Or maybe it was just the way his fingers inched a little closer now. Still not touching, still not quite asking, but enough to make Alex's heart stumble. "You live around here?" Ryan asked after a moment, his voice lower now, softer. "Not far, but it's not home." Ryan turned to look at him then. Really looked. "What is?" Alex met his eyes. The world dropped away for a second, just the weight of that gaze holding everything still. The question hung between them, unanswered. Then, quietly, like testing a wire for tension, Ryan's hand touched the back of Alex's. Barely there. Just the edge of a knuckle brushing his skin. Alex didn't move. He didn't speak, but the breath he let out was slow, shaky, and his chest ached like something had finally started to thaw. The touch lingered, feather-light, but full of intention, a promise not yet made. "I wasn't sure if you'd mind," Ryan said softly, voice closer now. "I don't," Alex whispered. The words catching in his throat, the air shifted again. Something unspoken curled around them like the breeze, thick with electricity, with the pull of something neither of them had dared name until now. Alex could feel his pulse in his fingertips, his breath catching as Ryan's hand turned slowly, their fingers sliding together, skin to skin. No hurry, just pressure, warmth, the faint tremor of something beginning. He looked over at Ryan, eyes shaded but close, too close. And for a split second, Alex saw what was beneath all that calm, hunger, curiosity, and something deeper. Something that wasn't just about bodies or moments, but about recognition. That quiet, terrifying thrill of being seen. Alex's heart was a drumbeat against his ribs. Ryan's thumb brushed over his knuckle, an echo of a kiss not yet given. Neither of them spoke. There was no need. The silence between them said everything, and neither of them moved away. The sky had shifted to deeper shades of violet and amber, the horizon melting into itself as the sun slipped further down. The tide rolled in, slow and steady, like it had all the time in the world. Alex and Ryan still sat close, fingers loosely intertwined, their silence wrapped in something intimate, electric. Alex's breath had settled, but not fully. The heat radiating from Ryan's hand still pulsed along his skin, subtle but undeniable. There was a stillness to the moment, but it was the kind just before a storm. Not chaos, but anticipation. Alex could feel it in his chest, in the tight pull between wanting to lean in and the restraint that held him there. Perfectly still, Ryan finally spoke, his voice low and careful. "You don't talk much." Alex looked at him, his lips parting as if to reply, but he just shrugged. Never needed to. "I like that," Ryan said. "Some people fill silence like they're afraid of it. You don't seem afraid." Alex let out a soft breath. "I think I've just been alone long enough to make peace with it." Ryan nodded, his gaze flicking back to the ocean, but his fingers tightened gently around Alex's. "Me too." They sat like that for a while, the sand cooling beneath them, the air shifting as the beach emptied out completely. The only sounds were the hush of waves and the occasional cry of gulls overhead. And somewhere beneath it all, the unspoken hum of their bodies reacting to proximity. Familiar, but new. Alex was aware of every inch between them. Every slow breath Ryan took. The faint scrape of stubble on his jaw as he turned his head. Alex wanted to say something, to name what this was, but language felt too sharp, too clumsy for the softness of this moment. Instead, he leaned back, mirroring Ryan's position, elbows bracing him in the sand. Their shoulders touched now, barely, but the pressure sent a ripple down Alex's spine. Goosebumps rose along his arms, though the air was still warm. Ryan noticed. Without turning, he asked, "Cold?" "No." Alex's voice was softer than he meant, almost like confession. Ryan's lips curved into a slight smile. "Good." The touch came next. Slow, tentative. Ryan's hand left Alex's and moved lightly, fingers brushing against his forearm, tracing the skin in a line so delicate it almost didn't register. But Alex felt it. All of it. His breath caught, his body tensing in a way that wasn't fear, wasn't hesitation. It was the kind of tension that builds behind a locked door before someone decides to open it. His eyes closed briefly. Then Ryan's fingers slid higher, to the crook of his elbow, resting there like a question. Alex turned to face him, their faces inches apart now. Ryan had removed his sunglasses, his eyes, gray-green and unreadable, met Alex's with quiet focus. Not demanding, just waiting. "You're not what I expected today," Alex said, voice low. Ryan's smile was slow and genuine. "Neither are you." There was a pause, heavy with the possibility of movement, of a kiss. Alex's pulse thudded in his throat. He could feel the warmth of Ryan's breath on his cheek, the way Ryan's eyes dropped for just a second to his mouth, then back up. But he didn't close the gap. He stayed right there, on the edge, letting the moment hold. Alex felt the tension mount like a slow crescendo. It wasn't just want. It was recognition. Something older. The feeling of being seen in a way that went beyond attraction, deeper than the skin. Ryan's hand came up, brushing a strand of hair back from Alex's face, his fingers lingering against his temple. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was quiet, reverent, like he was afraid to shatter something fragile. Alex swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. "You always this forward with strangers?" Ryan's thumb traced along his cheekbone. "Only the ones I don't want to forget." The words landed deep in Alex's chest. He couldn't remember the last time someone had said something that made him feel seen instead of just wanted. He leaned forward, just slightly. But still, they didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, Ryan drew back, just enough to make the tension ache. "You hungry?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Alex blinked. "What?" Ryan stood, brushing sand from his shorts, offering a hand. "There's a small fire pit up past the dunes. I brought stuff for a little cookout. Wasn't planning on company, but..." Alex hesitated. The mood had shifted again, but not away from the heat between them, just redirected it, like a candle turned down, but still burning. He reached for Ryan's hand and let himself be pulled to his feet. They walked side by side, shoulders bumping, not speaking as they climbed the soft slope behind the beach. The fire pit was nestled in a hollow among beach grass. Hidden from the wind, Ryan knelt to light the coals, his hands working efficiently. And Alex watched him, noting the strength in his arms, the way he moved with ease, like he belonged here. The fire caught quickly, and the orange light flickered over both of them, casting their faces in warm shadow. Ryan handed Alex a blanket to sit on, and they settled in close. Ryan passed over a soda can, then leaned back on one arm, his other hand resting on the sand between them. Palm open, waiting. Alex didn't think. He just laid his hand over it. The fire cracked softly. Their fingers wove together again. No more words were needed. Only the slow dance of light, the deepening night, and the weight of two men, drawn to each other by something unnameable, something real. The fire's glow flickered across their faces, warm against the deepening blue of the sky. The last of the daylight had slipped beneath the horizon, and now the stars began to gather, quietly, above them. Crickets chirped from somewhere out in the dunes, and the waves murmured faintly in the distance. A low, endless rhythm. Alex and Ryan sat close by the fire pit, knees drawn up, shoulders brushing. Their fingers still linked, calmly, deliberately, like neither of them was ready to let go just yet. Ryan broke the silence first. "So what brought you out here today, really?" Alex thought for a second, eyes on the fire. Noise, the kind you carry in your head and don't even realize until it's too loud to ignore. Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that one." There was something comforting in the way he said it. No dramatics, just understanding, quiet and complete. Alex looked at him then, really looked. The firelight threw shadows across Ryan's jaw, deepening the line of his cheekbone, catching in the curl of his dark hair. His expression was unreadable, calm, sure. But his eyes held something more, a question maybe, or a challenge. It was hard to tell with him, that was part of it. The mystery wasn't distant, it drew you in. Alex felt his chest tighten. "I didn't expect to meet anyone," he said softly. Ryan turned toward him. "Neither did I." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, everything else faded. Wind, waves, even the fire. There was a current running between them now, low and steady, building by the second. It didn't ask for permission. It just grew. Alex could feel it in the pit of his stomach, rising up through his ribs, catching somewhere behind his breath. And when Ryan shifted slightly, drawing just a fraction closer, that warmth became something almost unbearable. "You keep looking at me like you're waiting for something," Ryan said, his voice a little lower now. Alex's pulse skipped. "Maybe I am." There was a pause, not hesitation, just the moment stretching, waiting for one of them to move. Ryan's hand left Alex's. He reached up, slowly, deliberately, and his fingertips brushed against Alex's neck, light as a whisper. Just that single touch sent a rush through Alex's entire body. His breath caught, his skin tingled. It was like someone had turned on a switch beneath his skin. Ryan's hand lingered there, fingers resting just beneath Alex's jaw. Still, he didn't kiss him, but his voice dropped to a whisper, just inches from Alex's lips. "I don't want to guess with you. If I do this, I want to know it's what you want." Alex stared at him, every muscle taut, every nerve on edge. The fire crackled, throwing sparks that swirled upward into the night. And then, slowly, quietly, Alex nodded. That was all it took. Ryan leaned in. No hesitation this time, no second guessing. His lips brushed against Alex's, soft and certain. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't a collision, it was something else. Slow, full of heat, full of gravity, the kind of kiss that doesn't ask. It claims. Alex responded before he could think, his hand rising instinctively to Ryan's chest, feeling the heat of his body beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. Their mouths moved together in a rhythm that was unhurried, but intense, like two people realizing just how long they'd been waiting to be touched like this. The kiss deepened for a moment, then paused. Their foreheads touched. Alex's voice was low, shaky. That felt dangerous. Ryan smiled against his skin. "Yeah, and I don't regret it." Neither of them pulled away. Their bodies had shifted now, closer, legs brushing. Ryan's arm draped behind Alex, fingers resting on the curve of his waist. The firelight glowed around them, casting long shadows, but the space between them stayed close, tight, alive. Alex let his head rest briefly against Ryan's shoulder. The scent of salt, smoke, and warm skin surrounded him, intoxicating in a way he hadn't expected. He could feel the rise and fall of Ryan's breathing. Steady, strong. After a moment, Ryan spoke. "I don't know what this is yet, but I don't want it to end tonight." Alex's reply was almost a whisper. "Me neither." They didn't rush anything. No urgency, no games, just slow, natural movements. Talking quietly, fingers grazing over arms, leaning in again for another kiss. This one softer, more exploratory, lips pressing gently, breath shared between them. At one point, Alex laughed under his breath. "You really don't act like a stranger." Ryan kissed the corner of his mouth. "Maybe I'm not." Time passed like that, fluid and slow. The fire burned lower, but neither of them seemed to notice. They were lost in each other's presence, the space between them disappearing with each lingering glance, each soft touch, each kiss that said more than words ever could. And when the fire had all but died, and the stars were high and silver above them, Ryan looked at Alex, not just at his face, but into him. "You staying tonight?" Alex didn't even hesitate. "Yes." The night settled around them like a secret. Velvet dark, pierced only by the faint hiss of the sea and the glow of dying embers. Alex sat close to Ryan, a borrowed hoodie now draped over his shoulders, still warm from the other man's body. It smelled faintly of smoke and salt, and something unmistakably Ryan. The sleeves were too long, and that small fact, for some reason, made Alex's chest tighten. They hadn't spoken in a few minutes, not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said in the space between their bodies. Ryan sat cross-legged, elbow resting casually on his knee, his gaze on the horizon. But every now and then, his eyes flicked back to Alex. Not possessive, not curious, just present, watching him like he still couldn't believe he was there. Alex felt it too. That surreal float between disbelief and desire. This had started as just another solitary trip, a quiet retreat to feel something besides numb. But now there was heat on his skin, the ghost of Ryan's lips still tingling against his own, and a kind of gravity that made him ache and settle all at once. Ryan broke the silence first. "You ever do this before?" Alex turned his head. "Sit by a fire with a stranger after kissing him under the stars?" Ryan smiled slowly. "Exactly." "No," Alex said, voice soft. "You?" "Not like this." The pause that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with meaning, with a quiet recognition of something neither of them had expected. Ryan's hand moved, fingertips trailing across the blanket between them, searching. Alex met him halfway, their fingers locked again. Ryan stood, gently tugging Alex up with him. "Come on." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we won't freeze." Alex hesitated, then followed. They walked quietly, side by side, past the dunes and through the narrow path toward a small, nondescript camper parked just beyond the tree line. It was simple, modest, but neat. The door creaked softly as Ryan opened it, and the warm interior lighting spilled out, casting their shadows against the sand. Inside, the air was still and hushed. Alex stepped in, heart thudding harder than he expected. There was nothing overtly intimate about the space. Just a few books stacked on the counter, a flannel blanket tossed over a bench, a mug beside a cold kettle. But the fact that he had been brought here felt intimate. Ryan closed the door behind them. For a long beat, neither of them moved. Then Ryan crossed the room in 2 steps and stood in front of Alex. Close, but not touching. His voice was quiet, almost careful. "You don't have to stay." Alex looked up at him. Ryan's eyes were darker here, the gold of the firelight replaced by the dim lamplight, but no less intense. There was tension in the air again, not sharp, but humming, thick, the kind that made your skin hypersensitive, like every inch of your body was listening. "I want to," Alex said. He didn't even hear his own voice. He just saw the way Ryan's jaw flexed slightly, saw the way his breath hitched, and then the way he stepped forward. This time, the kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't patient. It was charged. Ryan's hands found Alex's face, pulling him close, his mouth warm and certain against Alex's. The heat flared between them again, fast and consuming, and Alex felt himself melt into the pressure. His hands gripping the fabric of Ryan's shirt, fingers curling like he needed to hold on to something real. Their bodies pressed together, and the contact made something inside Alex crack wide open. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was need. Not just for touch, but for connection, for that rare, raw electricity that told him he wasn't alone anymore. Ryan's lips moved from Alex's mouth to his jaw, slow and deliberate, brushing down his neck. Barely there kisses that made Alex's whole body light up. His breath came faster. He tilted his head back, giving in to the warmth, the attention, the intimacy of it all. They didn't speak. Words would have ruined the spell. Instead, Ryan guided him gently toward the small bench near the window. They sat, tangled together, the kiss never really breaking, just shifting, softening, then returning with renewed urgency. Ryan's hands roamed slowly over Alex's back, along his sides, never rushing, never pushing. Every touch was deliberate. Every brush of skin sent sparks that danced across Alex's nerves. It was overwhelming, but not frightening. Because somehow, even in this intensity, there was safety, a mutual understanding, an unspoken respect for the moment and what it meant. Eventually, their foreheads touched again, breath mingling. Alex's voice was a whisper. "I don't know what this is going to be." Ryan pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "It doesn't have to be anything yet." Alex nodded, a soft smile playing at his lips. Ryan reached for the blanket behind them, wrapping it loosely around their shoulders. The warmth cocooned them, and Alex let himself relax into it, into the quiet rhythm of Ryan's breathing, the steady thrum of connection between their bodies. They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, watching the dark through the window, wrapped in warmth and closeness and something deeper that neither dared name. There was no rush, no expectations, just the deep pull of something real, and neither of them let go. Morning came softly. Alex stirred. His body curled loosely against Ryan's, both still wrapped in the flannel blanket from the night before. Their legs were tangled, their breaths slow. A quiet warmth filled the small space, not just from their shared body heat, but from something gentler, something steadier. It wasn't lust that lingered now. It was presence. Closeness. The kind that stays after the fire burns low and the world begins to wake. Alex opened his eyes slowly. Blinking into the light, Ryan was already awake, watching him, his expression calm but unreadable. "Hey," Ryan whispered, his voice still rough with sleep. Alex's mouth tugged into a small, sleepy smile. "Hey." Neither moved. There was no awkward rush to fix hair, to create space, to explain. No barrier to rebuild, just a mutual stillness, a fragile peace. "How long have you been watching me?" Alex asked, his voice quiet. Ryan shrugged, the motion subtle against the mattress. "A while. You looked calm. I didn't want to mess with that." Alex's hand found Ryan's beneath the blanket. He traced the shape of his fingers, the line of his wrist. I haven't felt calm in a long time. They lay like that for another stretch of time, the minutes soft and slow, like the edges of a dream you're not ready to wake from. Eventually, Ryan spoke again. Last night wasn't just random for me. Alex's heart gave a slow, deliberate thud. He didn't respond right away. Ryan went on, I don't know what this is, or where it goes, or if it even fits in the real world. But it mattered. You matter. Alex's throat tightened. It wasn't just the words. It was the quiet weight behind them. The fact that Ryan wasn't trying to sell a fantasy or wrap everything in perfect promises. He was just telling the truth. I know, Alex said. I felt it too. Ryan turned toward him then, their noses nearly brushing, eyes locked in that narrow space between closeness and kiss. So what now? Alex exhaled slowly. I go back to my life. You go back to yours. Ryan's gaze darkened a little, but he didn't argue. Ryan nodded once, slowly. So we don't forget. No, Alex said, voice firmer now. We don't forget. They kissed again, not urgent, not intense, but full of something steadier, a vow, unspoken, a thank you. When they stepped outside the camper, the sun had begun to rise fully, casting gold across the sand and silver across the sea. The wind had picked up slightly, tugging at Alex's hair, but he didn't pull the hoodie's hood over his head. He wanted to feel it. All of it. They walked slowly back toward the beach, shoes in hand, their shoulders brushing now and then. Their silence wasn't heavy. It was full, like two people who had said everything without speaking. At the shoreline, Ryan stopped. He looked at Alex, eyes softer than they had been even the night before. I don't believe in accidents, he said. Alex tilted his head. So what was this? Ryan's gaze didn't waver. Something I needed. Maybe something you needed too. Alex looked out at the ocean, the white froth rolling toward their bare feet. It was more than that, he said quietly. They stood for a while in that spot, letting the wind speak where they didn't have to. Eventually, Alex reached for his bag, slung it over one shoulder. His heart was heavy, but not in a way that hurt. It was just full, too full for regret. Ryan stepped in, one last time, cupping Alex's face gently, thumb brushing the edge of his jaw. Don't disappear, he said, not begging, just asking. I won't, Alex replied. Not really. And then, finally, they kissed once more. A lingering kiss, a closing kiss, the kind you feel days later, echoing beneath your ribs when the world gets quiet again. Then Alex turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Not because he wanted to forget, but because what had happened between them didn't live behind him. It lived inside him now, and it always would.